All right, let's do it.
3, 2, 1. All right. Sorry. Continue. You were saying episode 727. How do I say your last name? Luongo. And yeah, so we're just saying you can't trust anything after 2 years of COVID. So it doesn't matter what they're saying, whether they're saying Russia's invading Ukraine or whether they're saying that a storm is coming this weekend. To me, everything is on. So you were just saying before I cut you off rudely.
No worries. I was just going to say that the big red pill for a lot of people coming forward is going to be that moment where they go, oh my God, they do lie about everything. Yeah. Like I still think there's way too many people who are like, well, they lie about some things, but they can't lie about that.
Yeah.
Well, no, really, they do lie about that too. And I think we're at a moment in time where about 15% of the population is going to have to realize that they're lying about this, and then a third of them will go, but then they lie about everything. And if you can get another 5% of the population, then it doesn't matter if we're talking Germany or the United States, you get another 5% of the population to say, okay, this is nonsense. What is going on here? These people are congenital liars. That's revolutionary numbers. And I think that what Putin is doing with the way he's prosecuting the war in Ukraine is he's forcing, again, like Trump did for 4 years, he's forcing these people out into the open to lie openly about what their motivations are, what our motivations are, and everything else, in order to then pressure capital markets to the point where everybody has to go, why can't we buy Russian gas?
Yeah.
Why should we care about Ukraine? Why can't we buy Russian gas? Why should I starve in my home? Because this government that, only 25% of the population voted for says we're not allowed. Like, it's dumb. And then we got Klaus Schwab out there running his mouth saying it's all in service of, stupid stuff like climate change and all the rest of it. So,
yeah. And you got Tim Dillon, my favorite comedian, said, I think on his most recent show, he was like, the invasion, he's this fat gay comedian, really raspy voice. And he's like, look, right. He was like, the invasion's bad. The shelling's bad. I've made a couple tweets, changed the profile picture. Let's not get crazy. The reality is this, guys. We're coming up on summer. We need cheap gas. We were robbed 2 summers ago with COVID and riots. We were robbed last summer by fucking Delta variant. Yep. This is our first summer. I'm sorry, Ukraine. I say we revisit this in January. Lift the sanctions on Putin. I'm sorry, someone had to say it. And he's just like, how much of your life, he goes, are you willing to sacrifice for a country that most of you retards didn't know existed until 2 weeks ago?
Well, and more appropriately, that the only reason that this is so damned important to everybody, and it's good to know that I can speak freely.
So whatever the fuck you want.
The reason, that's fine. I just want to wait for the host to drop an F-bomb before I do.
Yeah.
Which is the funny, like, to realize that everybody all the people who are complaining and saying we have to go to war with Ukraine, we have to do this, we have to, all, who they are? They're all the people who have their fingers in the pie of all the corruption in Ukraine.
Yeah.
We're talking Clinton and Pelosi and Romney and Biden and all of them, and it's not just them. It's all across the European Union. It's far deeper than that. I've been going into it, and blog post after blog post, and I've done 100 podcasts trying to explain the nuances of this stuff. But the reality is, for the average American, like, dude, this is about them protecting themselves. This is about them not making sure that all of the bad stuff that they've been doing in Ukraine for the last 8 years since the overthrow of Yanukovych has all been in service of getting us to this moment where they could try and take Russia down. And there is absolutely zero reason why we, as Americans or even as British citizens or German citizens, should want to pick a fight with one of the world's most preeminent military and nuclear powers in the world, who also supply the world with almost all of the important strategic commodities that we need to run our very nice and comfortable lives with, and they're willing to sell them to us at dirt cheap prices. Why are we having to sacrifice over this? The reason, obviously, is because this is about a much bigger ideological agenda by very powerful people who have a hard-on to destroy Russia and take its wealth, and then force us to pay their prices for it with their control systems lopped on top that destroys our lives. And that's what they want. And look, Klaus Schwab is the most dangerous man in the world. I don't care what anybody says at this point. The guy's a fucking crazy goddamn communist. Honestly, Klaus Schwab, the CEO of the World Economic Forum.
Herr Schwab, his holy name.
Yes, absolutely. The Herr Schwab, or you know, their Schwabenführer, if you want to.
Oberführer Schwab.
Yeah, Obergruppenführer Schwab. Exactly. Yeah, I watched The Man in High Castle. I'm a huge Philip fan.
Fuck yeah.
Oh God, I love that show actually. Except
so
for the last season was kind of.
But that's what happens when you keep dialing it up and you go from like drug to drug, and finally there's nothing left to do but like speedballs and bath salts. You got to go. You got to go multiverse, because nothing. You know, it's like
I mean, the Man in High Castle was always a multiverse. It was always that story.
Sure,
going back to the original Philip K. Dick novel, that's what they were doing. But
yeah, but Obergruppenführer Schwab is the most dangerous man, and I just before I've already been permanently banned from YouTube for interviewing doctors like Malone and McCullough several times, and I think you saw, what was it, 24, 48 hours ago, Rochelle Walensky coming out, and the gaslighting has begun. Dr. Malone predicted this. Dr. McCullough predicted this. CDC director Walensky, or FDA or whatever the hell, said. She goes, I think a lot of the public thought that the science was settled, and that they thought science was definitive, and the reality is it's not black and white, it's gray, and that these shots aren't perfect. And it's like, dude.
Yeah, well, she's just being told.
But the point is you are seeing this sort of like dissolution of narratives. And the reason I say all that is because people foam at the mouth when I had on those doctors. I know that there are people going to be foaming at the mouth and saying you don't care about the people of Ukraine, dude. Say, dude, that sucks. This shit sucks.
It's terrible.
War
is never good.
It sucks in Africa. It sucks in Iran. It sucks in Afghanistan. It sucks to be a homosexual.
Sucks in Yemen. Where have you been in Syria, Yemen, Afghanistan, all of these places over the line? And then ask yourself, who has been involved in fomenting these crises, and who's been trying to clean them up? And you know what you're going to find in every one of these places? That we've been setting up, we've been lighting the place on fire, and Putin's been trying to put it out. Yeah, put the fires out.
Back before I rudely interrupted you with Obergruppenführer, you're saying Schwab, the most dangerous man in the world.
The most dangerous man in the world, because he has control of so many of these politicians after having effectively created, put in place juntas in almost every major Western government. Doesn't matter if we're talking about Spain or Germany or Portugal or Austria or Italy or the United States, Canada, New Zealand, Australia. All of these countries are led by people who have Schwab's hand up their ass, and his demands are their policy. Now, other than Biden, who's a complete fungus, and it's really just, and in our case, it's even worse because we've got Barack Obama actually running the show, and he's a willing participant because he hates America, and he always has. And so Obama the Vandal, I think the best piece of pop art of the last 10 years is Obama with the Joker face. Yeah. As Heath Ledger from The Dark Knight. I think it's the most perfect encapsulation of who he is. When you look at all of this, it's very clear that all of this is forwarding Schwab's agenda of a great reset, and to destroy the middle class in the West, to destroy the global economy in order to, quote unquote, build it back better along his techno faggot pedophilic line. I mean, this is what this is about. It's really just, my friend El Vaquero, one of my regulars on my live streams, calls them TPEs, techno faggot pedophilic elites. Fucking hilarious.
Techno faggot pedophilic elites.
Like TPE.
Yeah. No, because you always hear techno fascist. I just finished
techno faggot. Let's just get it right.
I just finished Leo Zagami's book, Confessions of Illuminati, volume 7 yesterday.
Right.
My God, if it wasn't the most accurate breakdown of what's going on right now, but he always uses the term techno-fascist. I was like,
techno-fascist.
Sorry, keep going.
Techno-faggot.
Techno-faggot, pedophilic elite. You can say whatever.
So I know I'm not really supposed to say that in public, because they'll probably get
listen. If people get upset about the word retard, it just means they're a faggot. That's how I grew up with South Park. Faggot was never derogatory towards gay
I know.
people.
It's like, it's ridiculous. I mean, when people say you're not allowed to use that word, I'm like, really? You telling me that I'm not allowed to use the word retarded is retarded? Yeah. And then the conversation, and then they get in this snit, and I'm like, no, dude, it's your turn. Shut up, go. Yeah. That's what happens to me. I'm like, you play video games with your friends every Wednesday. I play board games with my friends. Yeah. And half of them are gay, and half of them are millennial shit libs, and they just like, I'm like, shut up, go.
I don't give a shit. I
I
don't
don't
give
care.
a shit. Yeah.
I'm like, dude, you haven't lived yet and you don't matter. This is what's going on. So I'm sorry.
No,
But
you're fine.
um
Technofaggot Schwab.
so we have techno-faggot Schwab running around right now, and you can see what's happening. Day 10, we're recording this on what, day 11 of the war, day 10, day 11
March
of the war.
7th, 2022.
And it's very clear that from the first 48 hours, Ukraine should have surrendered. They have no Navy, they have no Air Force, they have no coordinated anti-air ground forces. They don't have any real coordination between any of their forces. And they're getting surrounded multiple Russian cauldrons. And then the situation on the ground is literally dire. These people should surrender. Zelensky is being told not to surrender, and then being created into some great defender of Ukraine. Now ask yourself why they are not allowed to surrender. And it's very simple. It's the same reason that we never recognized Crimea. It's the same reason that we refuse to recognize South Ossetia or anything else, which is that these areas, these hotspots, are left legally in limbo so that it will allow us to then turn around and go, this is a war zone. We have every damn right to supply support to anybody who wants to fight for the Ukrainian Ukrainian future of the Ukrainian state. If Ukraine surrenders, this is now a settled conflict between governments. Now, there may be pockets of fighting on the ground, but that's irrelevant to the reality. Is as far as international law is concerned, this is a settled conflict. They sign a ceasefire agreement. They sign a surrender document and terms of surrender. That's it. It's over. And then we would be the ones fomenting, we would then be the aggressors if we keep pledging support to fund an insurgency in Ukraine. So it's very obvious that the goal here is, and that's what Zelensky's job is now, is to, as the shitbag, actor that he is, to rah-rah the troops for Ukraine around the world to get us to come in and try and get NATO to get involved in this war and to never surrender. And we have the Biden administration, mostly through the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, who, by the way, is a Schwab acolyte all the way down the line.
He is?
Absolutely.
I didn't know he was.
Yeah, God, he is. So the whole freaking cabinet is, Tom.
God,
the whole freaking cabinet. Yeah, it's really bad. Look up. What's the? I linked to it this morning. I got a friend of mine. I can find it in my Twitter feed, but there's a there's a group that's two stages removed. It's all one big internecine group of people. Whitney Webb just published a great article explaining how we're going about funding and building the new Al-Qaeda that's going to fight from Poland and do the same thing that Al-Qaeda did in Syria, which is that they'll fight in Syria, and then whenever they get any kind of resistance whatsoever, they can retreat back into Turkey, which no one can chase them back into Turkey because that would trigger Article 5 of NATO. So they're going to use the NATO, non-NATO boundary as a means by which to keep these guys alive, constantly, throw them stingers and javelins and whatever else they need in order to keep the fighting alive. And legally in international law and at the UN, the whole thing bound down in a whole bunch of idiotic techno-babble legalese. Again, techno-faggot, pedophilic elites. So this is the game that they're playing from a legalistic standpoint. Putin, who has a PhD in international law, understands all of this, which is why he keeps going to the table and saying, these are our terms. You need to surrender. And if you don't surrender, there will not be a Ukrainian state in 2 weeks. There won't even be the opportunity for you people to surrender because we will just take the country and impose our will on it. Now, that will make Putin a pariah as far as international law is concerned. It will make him a war criminal in their eyes legally. He'll do all of these things, but he will not care because he will be dictating the terms on the ground. And he has the backing of everybody to the east of him who represent 2/3 of the population of the planet. In the process, and this is where I've been, now, how is he going to do this and not get deposed, overthrown, isolated, blah, 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 blah. Now the big question is, how does he survive this? Because I've been game planning this out with my partner.
Internally coup. Yeah. I mean, that's,
I don't think the internal coup is a big deal. I think Putin has survived multiple assassination attempts against him. He has tamed all the domestic oligarchs that are still in country. The anti-Russian NGO led CIA-backed organizations within Russia have been destroyed. Remember, Putin's anti-NGO laws, his anti-fake news laws, and all this stuff were targeted explicitly to get rid of all of the media outlets that are nothing but CIA and MI6 fronts. All that stuff has been destroyed. Okay, when you see these guys complaining bitterly about how Putin jails journalists, Putin jails CIA assets. He jails MI6 assets, posing as journalists. Don't want anybody to kid you. Now, do real journalists get in the way, get caught up in the fray? Of course they do. Is he an angel? Of course not. Is he fighting a war on multiple fronts against the most powerful people in the world? Yes. Unfortunately, this collateral damage, this friendly fire, it happens. It's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, it's to interrupt. A lot of people think that when you make an argument like this, that you're writing off everything, all the collateral damage, and it's not at all. But I mean I look at, I've had on several times now Joe Kent, who's running for Congress out of Washington State, former Green Beret, Special Forces, CIA, served several times. His wife also Special Forces, I think intelligence officer, killed by a suicide bomber in 2019. He's the widower of two little boys. That guy, who is, he looks like a mix between JFK and Superman. I'm straight, but you look at him, you're like, Jesus Christ, he looks like a superhero. That guy, who is as rah America as you get, came out on day one and said, not our war. Hey guys, I remember being jacked up about Iraq. Not our war. So when people say you're ignoring the collateral damage, no, I'm not. I'm thinking about all the Delta Force, Navy SEALs, Marines, Army guys, Air Force guys I've interviewed on this podcast, most of whom are injured, all of whom have PTSD, several of whom have lost limbs, most of whom have lost friends in their arms. I'm going, that is what's going to happen. We just got out from the Middle East. I don't like Biden. I didn't vote for him. And it was a sloppy extraction.
Yep.
But at least it's over. There's no reason. So when I play devil's advocate or apologize for Putin, or at least try to see where he's coming from, it's not that, oh, you don't think of the men, women, and children. No, I am. Right. I'm thinking of all the ones that I personally know. I'm 31. I would absolutely be drafted. I don't want any part of this shit. It's not our war. Sorry. Back to what you're saying.
You're absolutely right. And I'm going to take it one step further. The people in Ukraine are also being treated with as much respect as possible as a war zone could be. Look, it's either 140 million dead Russians because we allow Victoria Nuland and Hillary Clinton and all these people to put nuclear weapons on the border between the eastern border of Ukraine and Russia, with a time of flight of 3 to 5 minutes to Moscow, which means 140 million dead Russians, or it's not 140 million dead Russians and it's a few thousand dead Ukrainians. And while doing that, we also empower all the Ukrainian Nazis who we have given this power to and all these weapons to, billions and billions of dollars in weapons, to then persecute, who hate ethnic Russians, to persecute and slaughter ethnic Russians.
Literal Nazis.
Like literal freaking Nazis. I say this all the time. Like, hey, shit libs, if you guys are so happy,
punch a Nazi,
so gung-ho about wanting to go and fight for Ukraine, you can personally sign up for NATO and go, or just go run over there yourself and go shake hands with an actual Nazi. And while you're there, you get to try and punch them in the face. You've been telling us for years, we can just punch a Nazi. Well, you guys can go shake hands with them and go fight with them. Or you could shut your fucking virtue signaling pie holes and let the grown-ups speak. Who actually understand what's going on here. This is the last thing Putin wanted. He did not, under any circumstances, want to do this. He was goaded into this by Schwab and all of his hangers-on, who gave him no other options. Blinken has been the worst Secretary of State of all time, or he's been the best Secretary of State of all time, because he has done exactly what he's been told from the moment he took the job. Within 2 weeks of taking the job, he went to Anchorage, walked into a high-level meeting with the Chinese, and opened up with insulting them over the Uyghurs, and basically stopping the talks dead cold. Now, do you think that was done? Do you think that was an accident? Or do you think that was intentional? My take on this, being foreign policy, geopolitical guy, I'm looking at this going, I see nothing but intentionally bad diplomatic overtures towards both Russia and China since the day Joe Biden was inaugurated. These people started on day 2 with bad diplomacy. And since then, they've not even engaged in diplomacy. It's been a cartoon of diplomacy. These are our demands. If you don't like them, we're going to insult you. We're going to tell you, no, you don't have any rights. We're not going to listen to anything you have to say. And the Russians finally just said, yeah, well, this is where we are. Fine. Here are our list of demands. We put them in writing. We published them to the rest of the world, did that back in December, knowing full well that by February, they would have to invade Ukraine because the Americans were never going to sign off on them. Now, the people that were put in the middle of this were the European Union. If this war was going to be averted, it was going to be averted by the rest of NATO saying no to this. And the Germans caved because the Germans work for Klaus Schwab, and Klaus Schwab wants the war in order to continue his Great Reset now that COVID is over. And they've got to pivot off of destroying the oil markets, the food markets, and everything else in order. And they're going to use the excuse of the war with Russia to do this. This is a very dangerous game because the Russians have financial nuclear weapons that they can launch at us in ways that will collapse the capital markets so quickly that it will then also collapse all of the Schwab-backed governments across Europe. And if that happens between now and the midterms, if we lose like the German coalition, if we lose Spain, or Macron loses in France, or and Viktor Orban wins again in Hungary, yada yada yada. If these things occur, right, while this is going on between now and the midterms here in the United States, when presumably the Republicans will take control of Congress, and Biden is effectively unseated as president, because if the Republicans take control of Congress with a 60 or 70 seat majority, which is very likely at this point, you can bet that Joe Biden will be impeached, that Kamala Harris will be indicted, and Pelosi will no longer be speaker, and whoever's elected speaker of the House will become the new president. I can almost guarantee you that we're looking at that kind of scenario come early 2023. You understand?
And hey,
I can see this coming because I believe that by the time we get to the midterms, okay, and the reason I believe this is then I have to start looking back at what I'm seeing in U.S. power structure. I don't see unanimity in the U.S. power structure, right? I see a junta at the top in very Schwabian fashion. All we have to do is decapitate the country, and then we can enforce our rules around onto the rest of the country. Doesn't really work. It works that way well in Europe, but it doesn't work very well that way in the United States because we're too decentralized, right? Florida governor, for example, has almost as much power to impose domestic policy as the American president does, right? So does the Texas governor. So does the California governor.
Shout out founding fathers.
What's that?
I said shout out founding fathers.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, absolutely. So now let's start. This has been my thesis, Tom, for the last 7-8 months now. I've been watching this go on now for a while, and I've said this in multiple places, which is that. Okay,
sorry, the reason I asked if you think that. So I am conservative. I did vote for Trump. I would love to see that happen. I just have to, as with all things I try to do on this podcast, by seeing both sides, right?
Absolutely.
Voltaire said the sign of an intelligent man is he who can entertain an idea without necessarily believing it. I just look at like the 5 years I was laughing at like my liberal friends who are like, any day now, Trump's behind bars. So I have to pause and see myself and go, is that what I'm now going? Biden's going to jail.
I here's the gig.
Yeah.
Do I believe that the Republicans are a bunch of compromised shitbags? Absolutely. Yeah. Do I trust Mitch McConnell as far as I could throw him? Absolutely not. Do I trust McCarthy or Marco Rubio or Lindsey Graham or any of these people who are all in on this Ukraine thing? Yeah. Absolutely no. Their goal has been to present the opposition face on domestic policy, but then go, oh no, we have to do whatever they want on foreign policy, and everybody becomes a raging freaking neocon the minute there's anything happening overseas that we want to have happen, right? If it's good for the empire, then it's good for the Republicans when it comes to that. They always do this. But this primary season is going to be very interesting, is to see how many Trumpian style people wind up taking all of these House seats, where you see all of these old fucking boomers These geriatrics, these octogenarians are all stepping aside. There's a tremendous changing of the guard that's happening with the next Congress. A lot of very powerful people will be gone. Okay. And if they're replaced a la 2010 with a bunch of Tea Party guys, then we're going to have a much different dynamic in Congress going forward. And that means that the Republican Party is no way under McConnell and McCarthy are they going to be able to whip people into line over really dumb ideas. Now, let's take this one step further. The pivotal institution right now in the entire world is the Federal Reserve. Okay. And it always is, right?
Well, yeah.
But I want to throw a couple of things out at you. So the other day, Jerome Powell made it abundantly clear at his Senate testimony that he was, 1, against removing Russia from SWIFT, 2, against seizing the assets of the Russian central bank, 3, all of these sanctions are really dumb and counterproductive because they're going to boomerang back on us. He said all that. He also said he was, quote, not consulted by the Biden administration at all on any of this. They just went ahead and did it unilaterally without consulting the most powerful man in the world when it comes to financial markets. Now, why would they not consult him? Why would they also have spent the last 6 months delaying his confirmation for a second term? Because they don't want Powell as FOMC chair, but they don't have any way of getting rid of him because politically there's no way to put anybody else in the chair. Okay. Why is that? Who's blocking that? Because Obama's preferred choice is Lael Brainerd, who's the most ridiculous cartoon of a fucking MMT shitbag fucking commie retard. Okay. I mean, I'm just like laying it out there. She's the fucking worst thing you could possibly imagine. She believes in modern monetary theory. She believes in UBI. She believes in central bank digital currency. She believes in all of it. She's absolutely Schwabian to the T. She's, all in on the fourth industrial revolution and the whole 9 months. And worse than that, she's as big a freaking political social climbing animal as you could ask for. She makes Pelosi look like, she makes Pelosi look like a Quaker.
Jesus.
I mean, she's one half of one of the most powerful political couples in Washington right now. She's the one that leaked all the insider trading stuff.
Okay.
About the Federal Reserve governors who all got fired. She's also the one who signed off on all the trades because she's the compliance officer as the head of the committee that signs off on all the trades. So 3 years ago, she signed off on all the trades. Then she leaked it all to freaking BuzzFeed.
She's got that Himmler energy, right?
Oh, she's
so support the Fuhrer, but also constantly, how can I replace him? How can I get to that spot?
Now, I'm a little bit in the weeds here, but let's
no, I don't give a shit, dude. If this ultimately doesn't end up with Area 51 and nanobots and the coming
I won't go there.
Well, so I will push us eventually. So I'm just telling you, there are no weeds.
If you want to go there, we'll go there. But
there are no weeds.
I'll just shut up at that point.
I just want you to know there are no weeds. That's what I mean.
Yeah. My point being is that if you look at the situation, the Fed has never been under this kind of political pressure before. People like Danielle DiMartino Booth, former assistant to Fed Governor Richard Fisher, has said this openly. I interviewed Dave Collum on my podcast where he relayed to me that he was at the dinner when she got the note. She got the phone call from somebody at the Fed about what was happening. Okay. And she's like, oh my God, they're going after Powell and they're going after the Fed board. So this is real. But Powell's still there. Powell's going to raise rates in 10 days or 7 days, 7, 8, 9 days. What's the 7th now? So
today's March 7th.
A little over a week, right? So 25 basis points. He also said that the other day. And if the Fed, so going back to why is Brainerd not FOMC chair? Because there's no way to get her through Congress. You can't get her through the Senate. You can't get 51 votes in the Senate in order to get her through, or 50 votes in the Senate plus Kamala Harris to get her through a confirmation hearing. You can get maybe 35. Okay. Now, why is that? That's because Wall Street's sitting there going, no. Because who controls the Federal Reserve? The New York Fed. Well, the New York Fed is the most powerful of the 12 federal Reserve
that was the original. Whoever headed up the New York would be that, right. They used to be the head of it all.
Right, that is the most powerful of the Federal Reserve banks. Yeah. Who are the shareholders of the Federal Reserve?
all the big
all
private
the
banks,
major U.S. all the major New York banks, J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, blah blah blah
Citibank.
blah.
Yeah.
So now ask yourself ask yourself, is Wall Street pro or anti Bitcoin? Pro. They've been very pro Bitcoin. They're like putting billions and billions of dollars into it.
It's what it is.
Who was anti Bitcoin? Janet Yellen, Gary Gensler, the Biden administration, Obama,
Canadian
Schwab,
Parliament,
Christine Lagarde at the ECB,
Canadian Parliament, right?
Canadian Parliament, right? Okay, so now let's go one step further. So if it's Wall Street that doesn't want Brainerd, that means they don't want Obama. Okay. They actually don't want Biden. And
interesting.
I've got even more data than this. Okay, I'm going to try and keep this short. I've written about this to the nth degree. I've done multiple podcasts on it. I could be here for 3 hours trying to lay out the entire argument.
Don't keep it short, dude. Let it fly. Let it fly.
I mean, this started when Powell raised when back in June of last year, when Powell raised the reverse repo payout rate from 0% to 5 basis points, and that drained all the money that the Treasury was about to spend, which was going to ignite inflation, and inflation would have been worse otherwise. That actually drained like $1.2 trillion in base money from the Eurodollar markets around the world. Since then, the Eurodollar markets have been steadily careening towards, a complete meltdown. Jeff Snyder over at Lombard Partners has been banging his shoe on the table like Khrushchev about this for 9 months now. Yeah, exactly. No. And that was it was a very important moment because it was stealth tightening. It was the Fed already started raising interest rates. They already started tightening, but the political environment on Capitol Hill would not allow them to actually admit that inflation was real and structural, or start, prepping the markets that they need to raise interest rates. The situation on Capitol Hill was, were they going to get the infrastructure bill passed? Were they going to get Build Back Better passed? Were they going to, remember, Pelosi was tying everything, all these votes to raising the debt ceiling because it was the dumbest thing imaginable and it made no sense. They had the power to individually pass everything, but they wanted to pass it all at once. There was a reason for that, because they actually couldn't pass everything all at once. So that she had to tie everything together. Why? Because Wall Street was off the friggin' reservation, because they understood that if all of this stuff had passed, the Fed would have been forced to now monetize another $6.5 trillion of debt over the course of the next 3 to 5 years, because all of the spending in Build Back Better was front loaded. As the CBO report came out, and watch why Manchin kept coming out and saying, we have to wait for the CBO report on this. I will wait. I will wait.
Could you tell me what that means? Front loading?
Front loading means all the spending was up front. So it was a 10-year spending bill, but not 75 or 80% of the spending was in the first 3 to 5 years.
Got it. Okay.
So they, and then there's a very little extra spending over the last part of it. So, and they kept saying it's revenue neutral, it's all paid for, blah, blah, blah. It's not nonsense. The CBO came out and said it's going to cost $6.5 trillion. And they knew this. They just lied to our faces about all of this. So, if you watch the political situation, they kept trying to get this through. Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona kept saying no. They kept watering down the taxes. They kept watering the bills down. They kept trying to get the spending down, because what they were trying to do was impose and undermine all of this fiscal spending, because the Fed can't control what Congress does. We Austrians and libertarians and gold guys, we all like to focus on the Fed's printing all this money and they're handing all these trillions of dollars to the banks. That's the monetary side. But there's the fiscal side where the Fed has to deal with all of Congress's spending. We already spend through entitlements and basic and defense. We already spend all the tax receipts we get on a regular basis. Everything else is deficit spending. Okay. So now, what's Powell trying to do? He's trying to run out the clock, knowing full well that inflation is going to happen and start showing up at the end of the year. The economy is going to start improving as COVID recedes, right? And the economy starts roaring back. The economic statistics will start to show that we don't need Build Back Better, that we're not on the verge of a complete economic meltdown, which will give him the political cover to start talking about, we need to pull off QE. We need to start raising rates. We need to start doing all this stuff. At the same time, he's due to be re-upped as Fed chairman. If he wasn't due to be re-upped as Fed chairman, he would have already raised rates because it wouldn't have mattered because he was already ensconced for another 4 years. So they were using his re-up, his reappointment, and the political situation. All this timing was all supposed to be played out by October. Build Back Better was supposed to have been passed, which would neuter Powell. Then they can do everything. But the political opposition to this agenda hardened between like August and October, and Pelosi found herself desperately trying to just push everything through, and maybe she could, force, then she was just trying to play stupid games like, well, we're going to pass the bill and we're going to force the Senate to vote, force the Republicans to vote against it, or force these people to vote against it, and hoping that would shame them into something. I'm not really sure.
Try to shame the shameless people.
Yeah, trying to shame shameless people. That
doesn't work.
Should know better.
Doesn't work in Congress.
No, it doesn't. So once Build Back Better failed, once Biden met with Brainerd and Powell and came out of that meeting saying, okay, well, Biden gets to be, or Powell gets to be chair and Brainerd gets to be vice chair. Notice Brainerd hasn't been confirmed as vice chair yet either. Oh, by the way, so once that happened, that was your signal that Powell has won the political battle on Capitol Hill. Wall Street's come in, told Biden what the deal is, which is Powell's our guy. We chose him under Trump to start this process because we didn't buy into this shit under Trump. We didn't want this. Because understand that what Klaus Schwab wants is the destruction of the commercial banking system, to roll the entire commercial banking system up and give all that power to the central banks. Do away with the two-tiered monetary transmission system. Central banks issue to the commercial banks, who then issue the money to us. They want to just collapse that so that we go directly to the Federal Reserve or the ECB, and they can decide with the social credit system whether or not we get to have a loan, buy a pizza, buy a gun, whatever. All right, that's their goal. Wall Street said no, and if you know the men on Wall Street, and you know who Jerome Powell always worked for, then you always knew that this was what was going to happen. You also know Trump didn't like Powell because Trump is a shitbag fucking mercantilist who believes in a weak currency and high protection tariffs. So he and Powell were always at odds because Trump was trying to spend us into a new golden age by rightly cutting taxes and regulations and all the things he did right, but all the bad stuff of all the deficit spending. Whereas what we needed to do was classic Austrian style austerity. You cut taxes, you cut regulation, and you cut spending at the same time. What we always wind up with is we raise taxes, which is what the IMF and all those guys always say. We have to raise taxes, we have to raise this bullshit, and then cut government spending to cut GDP, and it's all terrible. It's like it's the worst thing you could actually ever ask for. So Powell was actually trying through monetary policy to pull back, but without the political will on Capitol Hill to get that done. Now you ask yourself the question, was COVID just another way of extending the Fed from, forcing the Fed to monetize again? Because once Powell took over, he was trying to do the exact thing. He was raised interest rates far faster than the market was happy with, that many people were happy with. They were screaming in Brussels. They were screaming on Capitol Hill. They were screaming everywhere. They were screaming on MSNBC. Yada yada yada. CNBC was screaming about it. Kramer was screaming about it. But the reason being, Powell is there. He's a private equity guy. He represents the banks. He doesn't represent, like Janet Yellen represents, the ivory tower intellectuals who write all these unreadable white papers, which tell us, how they're going to enslave us tomorrow. All right. She works for them. Mm-hmm. Gensler at the SEC works for them. Okay. So from my perspective, it's been very obvious to me for a long, long time that Jerome Powell and the banks have been off the Davos train, the Schwab train of this is how we're going to go forward. No, we're not doing this. And so if that's the case, then you have a very interesting situation here.
Yeah.
Going all the way back to Ukraine.
If the whole world's not in lockstep, because that's what it seemed like in 2020, right? It seemed like the election was stolen. It seems like COVID's coming out. There's mass censorships, roll out the vaccines. It did seem you're like, oh, so this is the end of history. But now anytime you have anytime you have competition, shout out capitalism, be it between you and I with podcasts or between the movers and shakers of $quadrillion of capital,
right.
we get something better. And this is what I do every episode is I'm going to go piss because I have a bladder of an infant, and you're going to monologue for 30 seconds and tell everyone where to find you.
All right. So what I'm going to tell you all now is here's the money shot. The money shot here is that you've got the Fed on one side draining the world of dollars, international dollars. You've got the Russian army on the other side creating reality on the ground that Russia gets to be an empire again because they get to control Ukraine. And in the middle is the European Union, and they don't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. Meaning that when the financial markets are the next stage of the war, the Russians have already, as of day 10, effectively established on the ground military control over Ukraine, as I said at the outset. What happens now is, will Putin unleash the financial weapons that he has at his disposal to destroy and break down the European capital markets in such a way that it forces political revolt in a place where people are already out there angry about what's been going on? Now, you know that the situation in Europe has been tenuous for months because there's been hundreds of thousands of people out in the street protesting against vaccine passports and green passes and all this stuff. And then what happened 3 weeks ago, 2 and 3 weeks ago, as COVID started to recede and we started to ramp up to the war, they started, oh no, we're going to back off on the vaccine passes. We're going to back off on, taking your life away from you. But other than in Mario Draghi's Italy, where they're going to say, they still say the unvaccinated are not part of our society because that guy needs to be dragged out by his hair and beaten to death until his dentures fall out, motherfucker. So I'm Italian. I'm sorry. He's destroying.
Say whatever you want, man. I don't give a shit.
He's destroying my homeland. I'm done.
Give him the Mussolini treatment. I don't give a shit.
So so when you think about it, they're trying desperately to dissipate that anger against them over COVID restriction passes and all of this stuff, and now shift that anger directly onto the Russians in order to say the Russians are coming, but the Russians aren't coming. They're going to take the parts of Ukraine that are necessary, that are important to them, and then everything else doesn't really matter at that point. Then they're going to force a new negotiation. In the meantime, you've destabilized the capital markets in Europe to the point where, look, we're going to be fine here in the United. We're not going to be fine here in the United States. You'll note what's happening. Biden is making every move imaginable to try and impose costs on us here at home in support of what Schwab is doing to the people in Europe. He's doing exactly the same stuff, trying to cut off Russian gas, Russian oil. Now he's talking about going to meeting with Maduro in Venezuela to get Venezuelan oil back to the Gulf refineries. He's talking about, fast tracking a new JCPOA to bring Iranian oil online so that they can then try and take Russia's 4.5 million barrels a day of exports off the market and give it back to other people.
Why not just turn on the ones that he shut down here?
Well, in some respects you can't, because we have refineries here in the United States. A lot of people don't understand this part of the oil market. Oil is not just oil.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There are lots of different grades of oil. There's oil of all types.
Crude, shale, Brent.
Okay, crude oil comes in many forms. It comes everything from very ultralight sweet stuff that we get out of fracking, produces a very light oil. Okay, and has a lot of low. I'm a chemist, and I've actually worked in the oil industry a little bit. I can explain this in very kind of broad, basic terms. Oil is, they're nothing. These hydrocarbons are straight chain hydrocarbons. So simple alkanes from, C3 to C5 to C8 to C12 to C20, right? Where it's a straight carbon chain with a whole bunch of hydrogens on it. Very simple. If you've taken any high school chemistry,
organic chemistry was my favorite class in college.
Right. So, methane, ethane, propane, butane, C1, C2, C3, C4. Light crude produces a lot of is heavily weighted towards the low end stuff. So it's good for making gasoline. It's good for making JP4 jet fuel. It's good for making, even somewhat making diesel fuel. And not really. It's really better for making, and organic precursors for things like, isopropanol and ethylene diamine and all these things that because they're short straight chain hydrocarbons. There's a high percentage of them. You don't have to crack them. They're right there. All you got to do is fractionally distill them and get the ones you want. On the other side is heavy sour crude. And now sweet and sour just means it is acidic versus basic. Sweet crude is basic, sour crude is acidic, because acids taste sour and bases taste sweet. So heavy sour crude is more heavily, the higher percentage of the higher straight chain hydrocarbons. So all the waxes. So C10 through C25. Guess what? More BTUs per gallon and per barrel in heavy crude versus light crude, because a lot more energy stored in
all the bonds,
in dodecane as opposed to methane. You can look all this stuff up. It's not hard. I'm not bullshitting you. Go get yourself a CRC manual. You'll see what I'm talking about. So the Russians produce medium and heavy sour. The Russian Urals grade is medium and heavy sour crude. Okay. The Venezuelans, all of our Gulf Coast refineries were built by Citgo to refine the sludge, the ultra heavy stuff that Venezuela produces that practically has to be heated to get it out of the ground. It's so heavy. Their refineries are all designed to crack that stuff. They can't crack light sweet. You can't fill those refineries with light sweet crude. They have to get medium sour, medium heavy crude. They have to get medium or heavy crude. So when Trump took Venezuelan oil off the market, I literally said, and that means that they're going to be buying. It means we're going to be buying Russian Urals grade, right? And 2 weeks later, big article on Zero Hedge. Oh, this is funny. The Americans are now buying hundreds of thousands of barrels of Russian Urals grade per day to fill the Gulf Coast refineries, which I already knew because I understand basics of the oil market here in the United States. Okay, so there's nobody else that can really supply that oil other than the Russians. The Iranians can do they have some of the medium sour stuff. They mostly produce light sweet over in the Middle East, which is why and a lot of refineries around the world are designed, are tuned to that. The Russian refineries aren't. They're tuned to the stuff that they produce. So that's why the Russians, have tons of diesel fuel and all the rest of it. So
not as simple as
it's not as simple as oil is oil.
Got it.
So most people in Congress have no idea about any of this stuff. The medium sours, the really heavy crude, there's really heavy tar sand stuff up in Canada, but Biden killed that with killing the Keystone XL pipeline. That's why that was so important.
Question: as someone who and people always say I'm one thing or the other. I've voted 2008. I voted for Obama because I was 18. 2012, I voted for Romney because I was pre-med and didn't want Obamacare. 2016, I voted for Bernie in the primaries because I lost a brother to suicide 2 years prior and thought we all needed mental health care. 2020, I voted for Trump. So I'm all over the place. So my mind's very malleable and plastic to this. So that's, I think, why I can play devil's advocate, is because I actually am trying to see all that. I'll be saying. So was the energy independence that you hear people parroting about Trump, was that real or was that illusory?
It wasn't illusory. It was real from a net inflow outflow basis. Meaning, if you totaled up all the crude oil, no. If you just looked at crude oil, no, we were still importing crude oil.
Okay.
But were we exporting end products, taking that crude oil in, importing more than we were producing, and then converting it and then cracking it and turning it into organic precursors and all the others and shipping it off around the world? No, we were actually producing more than we were consuming. But a lot of what we were producing, we can't use. Okay. Got it. That's the problem. Now, so a lot of our oil market is actually designed towards exports because of this, and another thing to think about as well is that the East Coast refineries are all tuned, and the supply chains there are all tuned around Brent, around getting oil light sweet off of the North Sea, because it's the cheapest way to get that oil. We don't have pipelines that send the light sweet from the back end or from the Permian all the way up to New Jersey to be refined there. We just buy it from the Brits, and the Scots off the North Slope or the North Sea, and they ship it across So it's an easier ship. It's just cheaper that way. Yeah. So this is why we never, in certain parts of the country got got the dividend of the shale revolution here in the US, where we were seeing sub $2 gasoline, and in other areas of the country, we were still seeing they're still seeing the price, 30% higher, because Brent trades at a premium to the West Texas Intermediate, has for years, because Brent is kind of the standard for international, that which 85% of the world's oil is priced as a premium or a discount to Brent crude. So whatever you're seeing Brent crude trade for, and it's usually, well, right now it's about a $2 difference, but it varies anywhere from nothing to plus 10. So, and then beyond that, everybody else's oil then trades at a positive or negative to Brent. But the oil futures that sets the price on ICE and on the COMEX are traded, that trades Brent crude futures, and everybody then negotiates private contracts based on that price. There's also the Shanghai contract for oil, and that's the only medium sour contract, futures contract in the world, okay, which is a big deal. So the SGE oil contract out there actually can coordinate for a medium sour grade, so basically Russian Urals grade and other grades. There's a lot of other places that produce medium sour, but the Russians are the ones that produce the most of it. Okay, and so that's important from that perspective.
To now to wind back before my pitch break. So talking about competition's good. Now we have Wall Street versus the Klaus Schwabian locksteps.
Yes.
Where do we go from there before my bladder so rudely interrupted us?
Sure. So what I was saying, what you got, we're gone. I'll repeat a little bit just so you hear it, which is the following: if the Fed is off the reservation, then the Fed the Fed and the Russians then will create a pincer move from two different directions against Schwab's desire for a great reset, because the Fed, and if we have a shift in Congress that will support the Fed going hawkish and allowing them to raise rates, and we can get some fiscal sanity here in the United States, meaning we just shut down new spending, at least, let the Fed raise rates a couple, even a basis point, even not a basis point, even a full percent. Yeah, that's going to add another $300 billion worth of debt repayment onto the budget. But $300 billion we can deal with. We can certainly find $300 billion worth of spending to get rid of. We could easily start to signal, if we have a Congress, this is my argument. And again, I was the first one that I saw to say this, but now everybody is beginning to see what I'm beginning to see. I'm beginning to see this idea leak itself into the financial zeitgeist, which is that we do have the opportunity here, since we're going to be in a stagflationary environment going forward, that the Fed has the room to raise rates, and then for Congress and for the political class to win, for candidates to come out of the woodwork now and win with the opposite message than we've been dealing with the Democrats, which is that we don't have to spend our way into oblivion. We are not rich anymore. We are actually quite poor, given the 3 years of COVID and war and everything else. Now it's time to tighten our belts. Now it's time to get serious about reforming Social Security and Medicare. Now it's time to do all these things. And the markets are desperate to hear that language out of American politicians. And so we will get quite the dividend if that is what emerges as the dominant political theme from here to 2024. Okay. Meaning we have a replay of the late 1970s of Volcker raising rates into an stagflationary environment, and stagflation being an inflationary depression, as opposed to a deflationary depression like the Great Depression. And a Reagan-like character going, we're going to tighten our belts, we're going to reorganize everything, we're going to cut spending, and we're going to lower taxes, and we're going to truly make America great again. Okay? That's the difference. Trump is not that guy. He doesn't believe in that. He's a shitbag property developer from Queens who believes that debt is good. Okay? It's his imprinting. You can't get around it. Trump needs to go away. Okay? I love Trump for other reasons. I voted for him twice. And I'm a fan of a lot of the work that he did as president. But I am also, like you said about Voltaire, I am also willing to criticize him about the things that he did badly and praise him for the things that he did well.
Yeah.
And I can see him as a complicated figure. And it's not a basic, orange man bad, orange man good scenario.
It's not. He's not on one hand. He's not.
And neither is
on. Yeah. On one hand, he's not Hitler. On the other hand, he's not the savior of Western civilization.
He's not Orange Jesus.
Yeah, he's a guy that has his up. But so with this, then how come we didn't see the Fed and the New York banks diverging from Schwab earlier if they're against? And then I would imagine
because they didn't have they were, remember, I think they were end run.
You think they were always against it?
I think they were. I think from the moment they put Powell in place, the more I think about it, the more I realize I've been going over the last 4 years since Powell came in and started accelerating interest rate hikes after Yellen, and then all the clashes he had with Trump. I think that they were already there, but this was going to be a nasty fight. This is going to be a nasty fight. And then you have the political, and then you have the junta on Capitol Hill forcing, and then COVID, which just, they rolled over. They had to roll over. What were they going to do? Like the world they forced us with COVID, and they forced the Fed and everybody in COVID that it was either the Americans step up and print, trillions of freaking dollars to liquefy the markets, or everything collapses.
Yeah.
And that would have collapsed Wall Street. So, it's, again, this is a very complicated thing. You're trying to get yourself out of a multi-layered Chinese finger trap.
Yeah.
Best way to look at it. And I've gotten past the first lock, but I've got 3 more to get past. Okay. It's a Rubik's Cube. It's a enigma wrapped in
a mystery and fucking whatever Churchill said. But it makes me think, again, Tim Dillon, he goes, everyone that thinks that Putin's going to launch nuclear weapons, he goes, listen, he goes, Putin has palaces. He's got yachts. He eats caviar to some horse pussy. He doesn't want this game over. He goes, nuclear war, nobody wins. We don't get to walk, everybody likes war. Wins. Nuclear war, hey man, all your Epstein Islands, all your coke parties and New York penthouses, you don't get that anymore when you're in NORAD at a cold, dark bunker. So what I'm thinking about banks is they're looking at the Great Reset, and there's a bunch of Wolf of Wall Street types going, oh, what's this commie shit?
Yeah, no, I absolutely.
Where's the gold-plated Lamborghinis?
We're going to turn. I'm just like, I've like laid this out for people on multiple podcasts and go, so I want you to tell me with a straight face, did you believe that Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan, is sitting back going, yeah, I think it's okay that I turned the world's most powerful bank over to a bunch of fucking shitbag German eugenicists.
Yeah.
You guy's Greek, for fuck's sake. That's not happening.
You think Lloyd Blankfein's really like, you know what? It is for the better. No. Well, you want to?
It's just dumb. It's dumb. And the funny thing is that the more I thought about this, I was chatting with my people. As I was putting this thing together right back in June of last year, I remember sitting there like writing that out on I have a private Slack server for my patrons. So we have a private discussion group. And I wrote this out. I said, does anybody here really think Jamie Dimon is going to turn JP Morgan over to a bunch of German eugenicists? And one of my patrons at the time, who's a hedge fund manager and has tussled with every one of these people, he shall remain nameless, had his life ruined by these people. He's like, oh, I know Dimon, and I know that is exactly not going to happen. I'm like, none of these guys are. I mean, absolutely, there's no way in hell that Schwab is going to be allowed to pull this off. They may have gone along with the early part of this, thinking that this was the way they were going to get out of it, but they were never going to get that. But once Schwab told everybody what the actual plan was, they were all like, "Oh no, fuck no, dude, no way." We'll get rid of Trump together, but after that, you're on your own, dude. No.
It's what you said about oil, right? It's not as simple as oil on, oil off. It's a very complex system.
And the central banks are not, and the central banks have been a cartel since 2008 because they've had to be.
Yeah.
But it's been the Federal Reserve allowing that to happen. The Federal Reserve has been controlled by Davos-backed ivory tower intellectuals since Ben Bernanke took over. And then it was Bernanke, and then it was Yellen, and then Powell took over. Things started to change under Powell. And this is the thing to think about, is this shit advanced from a technocratic perspective, at most up until the day Powell took over. And then the Fed started to change policy, but Washington was still on autopilot. The plan was still happening. Also, never forget that this whole plan of the Great Reset was supposed to happen in 2030 or even 2050. It was never supposed to happen in 2020. But the situation is so fucking dire from a financial standpoint. The numbers are so fucking terrible that the system was going to collapse on them anyway. They had to pull the ripcord now and try it.
They had to,
and
the bar closed,
running out of time.
The bar was closing 2 hours earlier, so the guy had to pop the line sooner than later. He's like, "Hey, you want to go back to my place?" He was planning on a couple more hours of drinking and schmoozing. He had to,
or the best way to put it is they reached for the boob way too early on.
Way too early on. That's my one of my favorite conspiracies, though. Is and it's not necessarily Trump. I know there are a lot of people that think that he is the QAnon master and is ruling the world.
Oh no.
No. What I do like, though, is I do like the idea of like what warp speed actually means is it was we are now at warp speed, removing the veil from their plans, because McCullough and Malone both said that too. They go, I think they wanted to reach for the boob. I think they wanted to do the COVID thing around like 2029, 2030.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And they could have gone it. They could have got laid. But
they would have gotten. They may have gotten it done. The problem is there's also they could have gotten it done because you would have destroyed another generation of Americans.
You could have done it, but now so that's kind of like what I like. It's warp speed of the plan being revealed. It's
right.
It's kind of like it took 2 years to see the COVID narrative fall apart. It's taken 10 days for people to see that the Snake Island soldiers are alive. There is no ghost of Kyiv. That Zelensky, all those images were actually from 2019. The helicopter that was shot down 2 days ago on CNN is actually from 2021.
Right.
You're seeing it accelerated. Yeah.
You're seeing it accelerated because, we get it now. And I've been saying for years, Tom, that I'm like, these people think they have control over the information space, but they have no control over it. These autists on fucking Poll and 4chan, like, I'm sorry, dude, they can debunk all of this shit in an hour.
Yeah.
There's no way to stop these guys. And they're committed, and they're committed hard to this plan. They're fully in, and they can debunk this shit, get it out into the world, and then hand it off to people like me and you and others who are going to turn around. I could take that stuff, not reference it directly, go find the corroborating evidence from quote unquote real sources, and then write an inflammatory article on it and have it on Zero Hedge where it gets seen by 200,000 freaking people. How are they going to stop that without getting rid of Zero Hedge? And if they get rid of Zero Hedge, like everybody, like they know they're fucked. Like
to me, I look at this, like I'm 31, I'm a biology major. I got into medical school, taught myself graphic design, and started a podcast. I'm 29 years old, living above my parents' garage.
Right.
I listened to the Malone episode on Rogan over Christmas break, heard him talking about mass formation psychosis.
Yep.
On January 4th, I did an episode with Dr. Malone, Dr. McCullough, and Dr. Matthias Desmet, who created mass formation psychosis. I got in touch with him in Belgium. The fact that I did that on a Mac in Maryland with just some basic Ethernet and a camera, got that out. That is now my most viewed video at 720,000 views. But that was less than a week after he was on Rogan. The fact that I put that together, single-handedly, I'm like,
exactly.
Now what do five autistic guys on Poll do? Yeah. I'm like, wait, hold the fuck on. Yeah.
Yeah, no, seriously. This is the thing that they're fighting. They're fighting an unbelievable amount of their own technology, which they think they're using against us, but we're using against them. Yeah. Far better than they are. Then we can get into Bitcoin and all the other stuff, but that eventually is going to destroy them from the other side, because they ultimately do not realize is that Bitcoin doesn't necessarily have to be a money, though it's a very good idea for a money. With Lightning Network, it becomes a very cheap communications platform that can't be hacked.
Yeah, it's ARPANET 2.0, just as revolutionary.
It's so much going. There's so much to talk about there. But, I mean, but as far as where we are today with Ukraine, Putin, and everything else, it's so very obvious to me that if I'm right about the Fed on the one side, and I know I'm right about what's going on with the Russian army on the other side, like this is very obvious. Like they're getting crushed, and they've lost the political war in the United States. It's just a matter of whether or not, they're going to cancel the elections in the fall. They're going to try and go for some kind of, I don't know, they're going to kill the grid, or they're going to, cyber Polygon event. And I'm like, I got news for you guys. And I've heard everything about this. And I have people on my blog yelling at me about this shit all the day long. And I'm like, you know what? Stop it. Putin's already given them read them the Riot Act.
Yeah.
Okay. The Riot Act goes like this. Klaus, I know where you live. If you give that order, the Russians just cut off their internet from the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Klaus, you give that order and you're going to die.
Yeah.
I can either send either a Kinzhal missile up your ass at Mach 9, or you can die in your sleep.
Yeah, some Spetsnaz friends.
I'm serious. Like the idea that they're going to cut off the electrical grid, they're going to crash the world's computers and everything else, and then still remain in power. Are you kidding? Again, you know who's gets on the phone at that point to Putin is Jamie Dimon, who goes, dude, don't let them kill them. Can you send the Spetsnaz in to kill this motherfucker, please?
The guys that funded the shooter on the grassy knoll come out of the woodwork and they go, all right, hold on. What the fuck are you doing?
It's just stupid at this point. And if we have that level of opposition to Schwab's Great Reset within our own government and our own power structure here, ain't no way any of that is ever going to happen. Period. It may happen to Europe, but Europe's gone. These people are ready to sacrifice Europe on the altar of everything.
Well, and there are a bunch of beta soy. I don't begrudge
the Europeans their future. It's going to be terrible, but it is what it is.
Yeah, well, they're a bunch of beta soy cucks, and that's what you get for not having a backbone. I'm sorry, but stand up. But I do look at I think of Thomas Powers, who I think was General Curtis LeMay's secretary, who was he was the top guy that would always stay behind at the bunker and off it where Strategic Air Command was located. And he used to say he'd be at his desk and he'd say he had like two phones. One was to the White House and one was to like LeMay. And was like, with these phones, he was like, I can like wipe out 1 billion people in an hour. And he goes, without these phones, I'm just a guy behind a desk. So I think of like something like Cyber Polygon. They're like, we're going to cut down your entire power comes from your perception of power. You remove dislikes, you remove comments, you censor, you shadow ban. Without that, huh?
What do you
have? Even know who Klaus was. We would just go back to. But okay, so and then
let's go. So what do you think? Out of curiosity, I'm going to lead you on to. I want to ask you a question. Ready?
Sure.
What do you think? I've talked about this. What do you think Putin's financial nuclear weapons are?
His financial nuclear weapon. Well, my logic is there are just nuclear weapons, and I know that's a simple-minded answer, but it's okay. His financial
need to go there.
Okay, so what I mean,
they may force him into that at some point, but I think he'll force them into that situation far earlier than that.
Okay,
how does he beat them?
His financial nuclear weapons. Okay, well, think about.
Just pick a financial word that you might think would work.
I'm just gonna think of a couple. I mean, there would be what he could do with cyber attacks, what he did on Ukraine in I think 2014 from Nicole Perl-Ross book. This is how they tell me the world ends. 4-letter word. Gold. Yep. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
It's gold.
Yep. Big dick.
And
gold.
the reason it's gold is really because oil. All Putin has to do is to reprice oil in terms of gold and only accept gold for his oil, and in the process sell it at a massive discount.
Yeah.
And force the entire world
onto the gold standard.
To force the one. See, the current financial, their power comes from the blowing up of this massive financial bubble and all of the money that they think they control, all these trillions of dollars they think they control. But those trillions are credit based on
a finite amount of gold,
based on the rehypothecation of a very small amount of gold to a pile that looks like it's this big.
Yeah.
Now you shrink that pile, which is more than 99% paper gold, not physical gold. And you shrink that down to even close to an order of magnitude greater than the amount of gold that's actually out there. You shrink proportionally everything else by orders of magnitude.
Okay.
So how do you do that? Well, the easiest way to do that is to say, look, the current price of gold is about 17 barrels to the ounce. Ounce of gold will get you about 17 barrels of oil. Depends on the, where we are today, plus or minus a barrel. Okay. Well, I know there's risks associated with buying Russian oil. Hey, how about I give it to you for 50 barrels to the ounce? And you don't even have to do business with our banks. You can deposit the money in a bank in Turkey because they take gold.
Yeah.
Or in Hong Kong, they take gold too.
What I would
now you're trading oil at $39 a barrel in gold. You're now forcing everybody to go, oh shit, I can get that arbitrage. It's a 65% arbitrage, Tom. Okay. Now, what happens then? Well, everybody goes and tries to find physical gold in order to buy Russian oil. And the Russians say, look, you buy it from us, we'll deliver it to your door. We won't do this free on board, which is the equivalent of you going to the Chinese restaurant after you've placed your order over the phone, then go and pick it up and bring it home. That's free on board, right? Oil free on board or soybeans free on board. No, we'll deliver it to you. There's another term for what happens when you buy it and you order it, and it's DoorDash. So the Russians go to Oil Dash. Okay. Or, oil Uber Eats or, Uber oil. We'll just deliver the shit to you. We've got the tankers. We've got the insurance market to insure everything. We're good. We'll deliver it to you. You just deposit a whole bunch of gold in this account over in Hong Kong or Turkey or or Dubai or wherever. Go get the physical gold. Go find the physical gold. There isn't any. It's stuck in central bank vaults. You either have to start watching the central banks disgorge their central bank reserves in order to pay Putin gold, which he'll put on his country's balance sheet, and then issue a domestic-backed, gold-backed ruble that only circulates internally. It's convertible for gold only internally within Russia, while the international ruble trades at whatever it trades at, similar to what China used to do with the onshore, offshore yuan. Okay. Putin will close the capital account for the Russian government, issue a gold-backed ruble for domestic consumption, domestic usage, and create a golden age for Russian consumers and Russian businesses, while at the same time crashing all the Western financial markets and forcing a 65% deflation on everything. Or a complete revaluation of the price of gold from $1,900 an ounce to around $10,000. Take your pick. Those are your options. And the structure of the entire financial system changes overnight. Now, all of a sudden, everything changes.
I would say I was not entirely wrong, though. The reason why he can do this
is because
he's still sitting on a shit ton of nuclear
weapons. You're absolutely right.
That's the core.
The reason the Iranians couldn't do this, or Venezuela couldn't do this, or Libya couldn't do this,
9 ways
because
from
they didn't have the weaponry.
That's why you can go bulldoze Saddam, you can bulldoze Gaddafi, do some Stuxnet shit, hit him with some NSA.
You can Stuxnet Iran, you can do all this stuff, but you try that shit with Putin, and he then says, "Okay, that's nice." The submarines,
fuck the submarines, got the dead hand.
The submarines come, surface off the coast of DC.
Yeah, and it's as
Eisenhower it's lights out.
Yeah,
and it's lights out.
And no one. It doesn't matter. Even
and
Schwab,
no one survives this.
Even Schwab doesn't. He's the
first one. He's the first one killed.
I've had on Garrett Graff before. Author. Sorry, keep going.
Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I've had on Garrett Graff before, author of Raven Rock. It was like the best-selling audiobook in 2019, all about the nuclear bunker systems.
Okay.
And even for the most elite of the elite of the elite, from like Eisenhower through JFK or whoever, even them, dude, the conditions are so austere. Sure, they figured it out. I mean, with recycling air, with internal oil reserves and water and food, and having their own stockpile of medicine and doctors and escape plans, and sure, all the blast doors and everything. No, you could survive in NORAD. You could survive in Mount Weather. the conditions are so
horrific.
I mean, eventually, I mean that they were stocked with alcohol and pills because they're like, eventually people are going to go mad. You're just going to want to start. So that is kind of, I was watching Dr. Strangelove yesterday. that is kind of the whole thing's fucked.
Yeah,
so
no, I know. I
could pull off this.
I forced my daughter last weekend to. I finally sat her down and said, "Nope, Soapy, you're not. You have to take 2 hours. You need to watch Dr. Strangelove. My daughter's going to be 16 in April, and I've been going steadily going through a lot of classic movies with her, and I even tweeted it out right as you know. I even tweeted out the picture of the television set with Slim Pickens riding the bomb to Ground Zero. Right, so I thought this was appropriate for this weekend. I don't know. Call me crazy. And my daughter, well, Camille and I, my wife and I sat there. Of course, we've seen it. You know, I've seen the movie 24 times. I practically have it memorized. It's hilarious. And of course, we grew up in an age where we understood that the only way to deal with this is to laugh at it. Because I grew up. I'm older than you. I'm 54. I grew up with air raid drills, with hiding under my desk and all this stuff.
Cover. But
she just sat there completely horrified.
Yeah,
by the whole thing. I mean, she laughed kind of nervously every once in a while, but she just kind of looked at this going, this is terrifying. I'm like, oh yeah, it is. And the only thing you can do is laugh because the rest of it is absurd.
Well, and it's also that it's at the end of Eric M. Schlosser's book, Command and Control, all about nuclear silos. And he goes, the thing is we have this sort of illusion that, starting in 1989, we stopped living under the bomb. It's all still there. Every thermonuclear, the delivery systems are better. We have less nukes. It's because you don't need as many because we're getting better at the missile technology.
You do realize that if Putin is not lying, that he has nuclear reactor fueled missiles with MIRVs on them circling the Earth, right?
Yeah. Well,
in the upper atmosphere with a 20-year flight time that can just be dropped straight down. Oh, that was Chicago. That was LA. That was.
Well, it's absolutely possible.
Ottawa.
We had Project Pluto in the 50s. I don't know if you've ever read into Project Pluto.
Right.
That's what we were doing in the 50s. It was called the Flying Crowbar. It was a nuclear powered missile that would circle in the Pacific for years at a time until we gave it the go order.
Right.
That was in the 50s.
And yeah, I know. So,
of course he has.
So Putin's got those weapons. He has those weapons now. And the thing is that we've been trying. I don't know. I've heard stories that we tried all that. No one's actually really ever, cracked it. They've got, a relatively clean reactor. It's still dirty as shit, but it's up there and it's doing its thing. And the thing that scares me more than anything else is how hard would it be for him to put he's got a nuclear reactor on the thing. How hard would it be for him to put, and he's in the upper atmosphere. So that means that you could put a satellite knocking laser on the thing out as well. And now you've got sharks with laser beams taking out our GPS systems.
Yeah. Well, the reason why Project Pluto didn't go through wasn't because it was feasible. They built a 1/10th order reactor in, I think, Mercury, Nevada in like the 50s. It worked. It worked really well. And the dirty reactor, that was seen as a feature because what we use it as is each one could carry 16 1-megaton hydrogen bombs. What the missile would do, it's called the Flying Crowbar. It would fly to 16 different targets in Russia, and it would drop 16 1-megaton bombs. All right, got it. What it would also do is it had a beryllium oxide reactor, so it also spew radiation all over the Soviet Union.
Right.
Number 3, it was flying at Mach 3. It had the mass of a locomotive, and it could fly as low as 80 feet. So the sound, the shock wave would also just kill people and structures and it could fly for like 6 to 12 months. And that would be one. The reason we didn't do it was because it wasn't because the technology didn't work. Technology worked fucking great.
Brilliantly, yeah.
The reality is they went, oh, wait, so if we build this, the Soviets are going to build one. And I think it was Eisenhower commissioned a report who was like, well, how do we defend it against this? And they were like, good question. It can't be done. And he was like, well, then fucking scrap it. So
scrap it, please.
It's no part of it's not feasible. It was, but if you're a madman, go in and use gold to completely change the financial structure overnight and go against a German eugenicist and a bunch of elitist techno-faggot pedophilic elites.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you whip out the nuclear reactor missile.
Well, I mean, and this is the thing that scares me, that nobody really wants to how far are they willing to go to win? This is the part.
Self-preservation.
Schwab and company. How far are they willing to go to win?
Self-preservation.
And this is where we get into Act 2, and we get of this drama. We get to find out because Act 1 is over. The Russians have have enforced a new physical reality on Ukraine for all intents and purposes. Now the negotiations have started. Now the financial war begins. Now the counter move. Can we set up a real insurgency in Poland? And can we can we play all these stupid legal games? And the Russians are done. Here's the big thing to understand. For years, Putin was always willing to back up. He was willing to negotiate. He was willing to sit down and talk. He was willing to do these things in order to be a good global citizen and to give people the benefit of the doubt. And every time we bit that hand. So every ceasefire was used as a means by which to rearm. We saw it in Syria 1,000 times. Every time our guys, our pet Salapis head chopping animals started to lose some ground that was important, let's go for a ceasefire. Hey, how about a ceasefire? And then they, blasted all over the news and tried to shame Putin to the table. And almost every time he went for it. You'll notice that every time in the last month leading up to the invasion of Ukraine, Macron went over there, tried this multiple times. And the last time Macron went, and other people, the last time Macron went over there, Putin said, there is nothing you can say to deter me at this point. You are just trying to buy time for your own political purposes. And I give zero fucks on this. You're done. We're done talking. Either get this fucking thing pushed through and come to me with something concrete, or fuck off. And that's exactly what happened. And you can read the transcript of the last phone call, the last meeting between Putin and Macron. And it basically said that, and Macron had to go home. And then and that's when everything changed. And that's when they go, oh, fuck, he is serious. He's not going to be deterred. And then what started as what was probably originally going to just be him moving into the Donbass to take Donetsk and Lugansk turned into a complete forefront decapitation and destruction of Ukraine's ability to fight back and to wipe out everything. And now they're beginning to release all the information about the biolabs, about the fact that we were building friggin' anthrax and smallpox and all this shit, and we're going to throw right at the Russians. Like, these people are fucking insane and they're disgusting. And if only half of this shit is true, and I don't even look at the Russian Ministry of Defense, I'm willing to believe that they're exaggerating.
Sure. Of course they would.
Okay, so I'll bracket for 25 to 40% exaggeration. So what does that mean? When you're talking about smallpox, it's either smallpox or it's not.
Yeah.
It's either anthrax or it's not. There's not like there's mild smallpox.
Yeah.
It's not like there's Omicron smallpox. Fuck that. It's either smallpox or it's not smallpox. Are they lying about smallpox? Well, Bill Gates has been telling us for months that we should be prepared for smallpox. They're, issuing patents on new smallpox friggin' drugs. Like do the fucking math. Who's lying here and who's not?
Yeah. The fact that they're going in and, I had on George Webb last week and the week before, and he was saying George Webb comes on every Sunday, and he was like,
oh, does he?
Oh yeah, no. Well, we've been doing it for like 2 months now. We're going to keep it going. We have a fucking blast. He and I were actually watching Dr. Strangelove during our podcast yesterday.
No, George Webb's a good guy. I mean, I go up and down with George, but I think his heart's in the right place.
Sure.
That's all.
Yeah. No, I go up and down with every guest. Yeah, of course. Right. But like, I look at like, he was saying like he was like, they're going to start. He's like, Putin's got to produce evidence. He's got to produce evidence because he's like, otherwise this just looks, and it very well could be just wanton slaughter. He goes, but if he can produce evidence on these biolabs, and then I was like, George, you've been right in my mind. I was like, you've been right about a lot of stuff. I was like, this is a big thing to buy. And then I see yesterday coming out across, it's on Reddit, it was on Instagram, I thought George, and I was like,
published all that stuff. Yeah.
I was like, no fucking way. So now it's getting very, and what I think Putin shelling that nuclear reactor was, I think that was the equivalent of saying like, I am going to do nuclear deterrence in one way or another.
I think what I'll flip that script on you, and I'll say, look, that it was very clear in the early hours of the invasion that they moved swiftly and with professional troops to Chernobyl. I heard multiple reports of not just Russians, but Ukrainian army, regular army, defending Chernobyl. Okay, meaning they both, that everybody on both sides said Chernobyl's not allowed to be on in play, because Chernobyl being traditionally the USSR's breeder reactor for plutonium 239 240 for high yield nuclear weapons. The one is Zaporizhzhia. I'm going to pronounce it wrong. So the Zapo nuclear power plant incident, again, bracket for Russian disinformation, and we've heard this in multiple instances, and it fits with other things that we've seen from the way Zelensky is acting and the way a lot of the hardcore nationalists have been acting, which is to try and frame the Russians for humanitarian mistakes and or humanitarian horrors, and to try and frame them for a false flag. What I think happened here, the Russian MOD said, look, we did not fire on the administrative building. That was a fire set by the guys who were defending it in order to try and frame us for this. And it was a matter of they were going to sabotage the plant if we did not attack it. Now, again, bracket that for Russian misinformation as much as you want. It could just as easily be, yeah, it was reckless for them to stage the assault on the power plant. But then again, given what we've seen in every other circumstance with the hardcore Ukrainian nationalists, yeah, it was a risk somebody had to take.
Yeah.
And then, the Russians, and when this is all over, I'm sure that the Russians will present all their evidence to the UN and the Hague and everybody else and say, look, this is what's going on. You'll note that they have been stymied in producing and being allowed to produce and show to the world their evidence on MH17, the Skripal incidents, like all of these things, Litvinenko, and all of this stuff. They have extensive intelligence on all of these issues. And at some point, someone is going to have to let them have the microphone and show it all. And it's it is very telling that no one will let them do that. That to me is like, if they're lying, they're lying. Then prove it. Here's your allegations. Now prove now present the counterintelligence, CIA, MI6, Mossad, whoever it is. Please do so. Let's hash this out in a public forum. But the fact that nobody will actually allow the Russians to speak and not produce any evidence that's worth a shit, that's even believable. Like, nothing about what we've been told about MH17 is believable. There ain't no way a Buke could shoot that freaking thing down. I mean, that's been like categorically, it doesn't have the ability to shoot a missile that high. Period. Under any circumstances. It was like what we were told about the IL-20 shoot down of the Russian Eland plane that nearly started World War III back in 2018. That a Syrian S-200 missile was what shot that down. Like, Joaquin Flores over at Fort Russ went through the whole friggin' thing and said, look, it's not possible. The missile couldn't fly that far under any circumstances. It never got close enough to the Syrian battery. So that means it was shot down, most likely by either the French or the fucking Brits. The Israelis were in the area, and to avoid World War III and getting NATO involved, the Israelis took the hit took the PR hit after discussing it with Putin, and the Syrians, and Putin's the one that says, look, this is what we're going to do to whitewash this thing so we don't start World War goddamn III, because the freaking Brits and the French are insane, which is what actually happened with that IL-20 shoot down. This kind of shit happens all the time. And the fucking perfidious Albion is behind all of this crap. If anybody needs to be taken down here, it's the goddamn Brits. Because they're the fucking source of 90% of this shit. The people are evil. The British government's fucking evil in every goddamn way. And I'm done with MI6. Fuck these people. Fucking Browder and what's his name? Fucking Christopher Steele and all these assholes. What do you think is behind all this shit? All this evil Russian crap. So it's all the same shit, dude. It's been going on since the early 90s. It's nothing new. Fuck the Brits.
Fuck the Brits.
I've been screaming about this for 4 years now. And they always get a goddamn pass. And they've got people deep in the DOD, the CIA, the State Department. They're everywhere. These fucking assholes. And they're feeding bad information in all the time. They're We're asking them to produce shitty information that they then pass back to us to frame Trump for pissing on a hooker in a Moscow hotel room or something. Like, it's dumb.
Which, on an aside, even if you did do, don't kink shame him.
Who cares? It's not going to shame Donald Trump. He doesn't. He's incapable.
He's shameless. He's shameless. As Tim Dillon, to quote Tim Dillon for a third time, Donald Trump is the most American to ever live.
That's right.
He's on his third marriage. He lives in a gold palace in a sky, and he eats McDonald's on his private plane, and he's got a fake tan. He's the most American American.
I know, and drinks Diet Coke in the process because he's trying to lose weight. Like it's the dumbest shit imaginable.
He's a pig. I like him, but I mean, I know what he is.
Yeah, no, I love Trump. I just don't want him as president anymore.
No,
That's all.
He's a fucking pig. So with all of this, though, right? It's everything we're talking about normally would be couched in like that's a fun thought experiment, but we are, again, March 7th, 2022. We are in a time where the physical reality has changed. There's now a Russian occupation force in Ukraine. And to me, the reason why this is so kind of, regardless of what it is, like I said, I just now question everything, is because for 2 years I was lied to my fucking face, and personally knowing, because I'm interviewing Dr. Malone and Dr. McCullough, I'm seeing both sides. I'm watching the news on one TV and I'm talking to them on another, and I'm going, a 1 + 1 cannot be 2 and 3. And so I look at that and I look at how they gaslit all of us. It's now coming out that the White House paid all these companies to run pro-vaccine advertising. And I would imagine, this is my prediction, in the coming months, we're also going to see collusion between big pharma and big tech about suppressing ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine. That's just a matter of time. We're seeing all of this come out. But let's put ourselves back in 2020. What did it seem like? This massive monolithic thing moving in one direction with one narrative. So let's just take that for what it is. Now let's look where we are now on March 7th, 2022. There's this massive monolithic machine, the Swift banks, MasterCard, Visa, Facebook, everything. They're all moving, and there's one narrative only.
They're trying to cancel Dostoevsky, for Christ's sake, because he's Russian. I mean,
Putin, man, bad. Ukraine, good. It's as simple as replace Ukraine with vaccine and replace Putin with fucking Joe Rogan ivermectin. That's what it is, and they're all moving.
Or anti-vaxxers. They now want to. They're doing the same thing that happened to Italians and Germans and Japanese Americans here in the United States.
Yeah,
during World War II.
Yeah,
we never want to talk about this, but all those people, but a lot of them were put in internment camps.
Absolutely. So,
and, I have not family members, but I have people in my father's neighborhood grew up and lost all their freaking businesses.
Yeah,
because they were Italian and they were just seized from them. Under FDR. It's like it's ridiculous. War makes people crazy, and it makes people stupid.
But so I look at all of this, and I try to boil it down to the most meta themes, and it's when I see an overarching narrative and I see everything acting in lockstep. It's not one company coming out and saying we don't stand with Russia. When I see every banking system, when I see every media outlet, when I see everything, when I see every fucking shitlib going, we stand with Ukraine, and I see all these guys going, America needs to do more. This is time for our fight. And I look at all of this, and I see the Snake Island shit and the Ghost of Kyiv and all these fucking frame shots of the beautiful women in Ukraine who are dying. Excuse me if a little part of me goes, this looks an awful lot like one message being pushed by a monolithic machine.
It's just he's Goldstein. It's the 2 minutes of hay.
It's whatever it is, whether it's COVID and anti-vax, or whether it's Putin and Ukraine in 2 years. And to me, that's where I look at it and I go, what the fuck's really going on?
And the truth of the matter is, Tom, is that if you look at the polls, it's not working.
Yeah.
It's not working.
Well,
everybody's willing to virtue signal on Twitter. Half the people on Twitter aren't real anyway.
No, it's dead internet theory. So
and and the rest of everybody else is like, yeah, it's great, but I'm not gonna send my kid over there.
I mean, it's been less than a year since the withdrawal. I can do like another 20-30 minutes, and then I think we definitely need to reschedule another one. Not reschedule.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to do another one with you. I have a thing with Palisades Gold Radio at 5, so I'm going to want to rest my voice and
if you want to if we want to wrap this one up, we can wrap it up now. But I was going to ask
sure,
for a couple more minutes. So this all comes down to then the entire thing comes down to the integrity of elections. Was 2020 stolen?
Of course it was.
So
there's no doubt.
So has that been rectified? Because none of this fucking matters if you can just get dominioned and fortified at 3 a.m.
Well, yeah, it's going to be a lot harder to do with 435 House races and 33 or 35 Senate races and 33 Senate races and a bunch of gubernatorial races. It's going to be much harder to do. And a lot of states have hardened their election laws in ways that it's going to ensure that it's not going to happen. I think the bigger question you have to ask yourself is whether or not they're going to even allow an election. They're going to try and institute some kind of martial law and say, no, that we can't even have elections. Now, if they try that here in the United States, aside from the fact that this is happening, these are state-run elections. Now you got to get 50 states to agree to this. Biden has to somehow, with a 37% approval rating, and by November, his approval rating will be in the teens. I shit you not, because we're going to be looking at $8 a gallon gasoline, and we're going to be looking at, $12 a pound hamburger and shit like that. And we're going to be looking at, no grains, and, bread is $15 a loaf, and all the rest of it. We're going to be looking at, this is what we're going to be looking at. We're looking at a collapse of the food supply chain. We're looking at a collapse of the energy supply chain. We're going to be coming into the winter with oil everywhere, but not a drop to friggin' to refine, because the supply chains will have broken down to the point where, where parts won't be able to be, manufactured to replace. And, there's going to be, the refinery is going to be breaking down, and a whole system is going to break down. Because when everybody worries about $200 a barrel oil, but has anybody priced in what it looks like when the world is staring at $5 a pound aluminum and it's used to 85 cents, or, $15 a pound nickel, and you're trying to make stainless steel? Okay. Or like I saw this morning that, Coal Titan Peabody is probably got to file for bankruptcy because they had a whole bunch of friggin' hedges blow out because they're, the price of coal is spiked. Okay. You realize that these markets, that all of these commodity markets depend on very sophisticated supply chains. And that is another way of saying complexity. And how do you keep an oil refinery running if you can't get replacement flanges, or you can't get replacement wiring, or you can't get the chips needed for this, the $2 chip for the freaking PLC controller that you've run out of backups for, because you ordered 5 last month, and they're back ordered 6 months. Like, this is real. And this shit's been going on for 18 months. And then we've got farmers who can't afford to buy seed to plant. Okay. You've got the Russians now saying, we're not going to export any fucking fertilizer because we're not sure we're going to have enough fertilizer to plant our wheat that you don't want to buy from us anymore because you're a bunch of virtue signaling faggots. Tough shit. I'll sell it to the Chinese. They're starving over there. They've got 1.2 billion people to feed, for fuck's sake. And so do the Indians. We don't need to sell you a pound, a bushel of fucking Russian wheat. You think there's going to be a Ukrainian wheat harvest this year? The Ukrainians provide like 18% of the world's wheat exports. You think there's going to be a planting? There's no diesel fuel in the country of Ukraine. The Russians just blew it all up. And this all could have been avoided if they just said, yeah, we're never going to, yes, we'll give you a written guarantee. No Ukraine in NATO. We're going to pull back our nuclear weapons to the 1997 contact line. The Russians say, we're never going to invade Ukraine. We're never going to do this. You recognize the Donbass. Done. This could have all been done, and recognize Crimea. It's all you got to do. These people won't do that. And it's not our war. It's theirs. Don't be gaslit. Be angry. Be pissed off that your children aren't going to be able to get fucking dental care. They're not going to be able to eat properly. You're going to be feeding them fucking paste off the goddamn ground and hope that you'll be able to add the friggin' meat from dog food into your friggin' dinner. Like, this is the shit that that a lot of people are looking at over the next 2 years. And it's not Putin's fault. It's our fault. It's our fault for not overthrowing the junta in fucking DC. It's our fault for believing shitbags like Soros and Clinton and all these other motherfuckers who've stolen hundreds of billions of goddamn dollars for no other reason than because they could. And we have the goddamn balls to sit back and get self-righteous about whether or not 600 civilians in Ukraine have been killed or not. Because that's what the Russians just said this morning. The Russian Ministry of Defense said, look, there's probably our estimates are 750 civilians killed. And we could have avoided all of this if you just turned over the friggin' Azov battalion. Bunch of fucking Nazis.
Literal
who
Nazis.
are personally responsible for the death of over 15,000 Russians in the Donbass. Now, is 15,000 dead Russians in the Donbass over 8 years a genocide? No. Should you roll your eyes at Putin's use of the word genocide? Yes. Is 15,000 dead Russians in the Donbass a tragedy? Absolutely. Is it a genocide? No. Is it a tragedy? Absolutely. Is it worth? But it wasn't going to stop. And the freaking Zelensky's out there saying, yeah, we should, Ukraine needs nuclear weapons, which they voluntarily gave up with the Bucharest Agreement in 1994. And they wanted to tear that whole thing up. And it's madness. It's like all of our people are running around like Jack T. Ripper going, it's time to kill the Ruskies to preserve our precious bodily fluids. I mean, we're literally living in Dr. Strangelove right now.
So,
and people are putting Ukraine flags on their Twitter feeds and thinking they're doing something. Fuck off.
They're not real. Those are NPCs. I mean,
I know.
Truly, these are people that there's not original thought in their head. They've gone from their arms are still bleeding from their fucking 19th boosters. They're holding up the flag. There's nothing. They're not.
I know.
Pay them no mind. They are but a tumbling.
But it's not. But they are a portion of the electorate.
And, no, they are. Yeah, I'm not.
And it's a real issue. But thankfully, the middle of this country, the political middle, is not buying this anymore. They're like, I want my children to grow up without a mask.
Yeah,
we're done.
Well, so kind of to wrap that. That was a beautiful rant, by the way. I commend you. I strive to have great rants, and that was a good one. I recognize it, but like, so I look at but I look at all of that and I go, okay. So to me, it's kind of like the whole, like we said earlier, the competition, right? The bankers, the Pincer against the Schwab. What we're seeing now is we're seeing a more and more complex system who now have a direct interest in free and fair elections. Mm-hmm. That's what we're seeing. And to me,
I think I wrote an article months ago saying, I think we've reached peak Davos.
Yeah.
And this was, and when I wrote it, I really thought I was ahead of the curve. I really thought I was probably stretching, but I had multiple people whose opinions on this stuff I really respect. People like Alistair Crook and others. People in the geopolitical realm, they were all like, "You're absolutely right. This is where we are now." It's the worst part is that they don't understand it yet. And we're still going to have to fight the war with them to get out from underneath this, but they're going to fail in a way that's going to create untold amounts of horror around the world for so many people. And so, it's that moment like, you got to take the anger and the frustration and everything else, and you've got to do something with it. The best thing you can do is to shore up your community locally as best as possible, to shore up your family as much as possible, and get yourself as healthy as possible, because you're going to need to be healthy in order to be able to deal with what's coming. Yeah. What's already here.
Yeah. Well, I tell everyone listening, I always tell them, like, the very simplest thing you can do. And obviously it sounds, there is a conflict of interest as I am trying to grow my podcast, but I always tell them, just share the link, because two things will happen. Either someone will get red pilled, or you will be censored from Facebook. And then people that know you and know that you're a pretty well-balanced person, Bob, Jill, whoever, they're going to wonder why you got censored. Just like when people that have known me my whole life go, Tommy's, he's animated, but why did he get censored? Well, Dr. McCullough told people they should take vitamin D. And they go, hold up. So I always tell people, share the episode. You either red pill or your banning will red pill people. And that is something you can do. It sounds like nothing, but there is something you can do. It just
Absolutely. Now, no one will be surprised when I get banned.
Yeah. Well, no, I've already been banned from YouTube, so that's like already one level.
Surprisingly enough, I still have a YouTube channel, but I don't use it for much. So I use it mostly to.
I can send you I'm friends with Dr. McCullough. If anybody wants to go kamikaze on their YouTube channel, I can get you taken down in 12 hours.
If I were to interview Dr. McCullough, I would do it, and that's fine. And I would love to speak to either him or Dr. Malone at some point, but I would never even begin to think about asking them, because I'm just I like, they don't have time for me. but I would have them on my podcast, and I would publish anything I would publish on Odyssey, because I'm not stupid.
I'm on Odyssey and BitChute. I don't. Malone's a slippery fish. I could probably put you in touch with McCullough if you want.
I would.
If you genuinely want to talk to him, he's a fucking cool dude.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. If you're willing to set up an invite email, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Tom, this has been great.
Fuck yeah, man.
I've had a blast, man.
I've had a blast too, dude. This has been fucking fun. I told you there are no boundaries of weeds, and it ended with us screaming about nuclear powered reactors in the stratosphere. So I would say we didn't get quite to Area 51, but that's what I like about this podcast.
Every time I hear the words Area 51, all I can think of is Gillian Anderson in her prime on the X-Files. It's like that's where I go.
I use it as like a marker. What I mean is like truly nothing is off limits. I don't give a shit. I've interviewed a guy that walked on the moon, and so
I have to deal with family members who are more than happy to talk about the little green aliens that are controlling all of this. So nothing shocks me, dude.
Okay. Well, that's what I like. I like people to feel comfortable. Like we can literally talk about anything. Thank you so much for coming on, man. I will email you this when it's up. It'll be up in like an hour or 2 hours or something. Okay. I'll make a note of it right now. I will put you in touch with Dr. McCullough. And if you could, I can't multitask, so McCullough, if you could just email me whatever links you want in the description. If you just got I'll
do that right. I'll do that once we get off the air.
Awesome. I will just copy and paste that. And that's what I do with all the guests. Whatever you want. Social media, you can do 10, you can do 1. I don't give a fuck. I'll copy and paste it, put it in there. I'll send it to you when it's up, and we'll shamelessly ask you to plug it through your networks. And I will put you in touch with Dr. McCullough. And I'd love to chat again sometime, man. That was fun as fuck.
Okay, no problem.
All right. Fuck Klaus Schwab. Fuck Klaus Schwab.
Absolutely.
All right, buddy. Take care. God bless.